Ivan, nice to see you again. Welcome to our briefing. I first of all would like to welcome Mark Brzezowski back. Colonel Brzezowski, as you know, was in Tuzla running the JIB there, the public affairs operation. Did a great job. We were able to pry him back here from General Nash's hands only by sending Lieutenant Colonel Donna Bolts over as his replacement. We're glad to have him back. He's tanned, rested and ready after his leave, and here with us, so welcome. With that, I'll take your questions on Mark Brzezowski or anything else.
What part is the military taking in this investigation, specifically in the crash investigation?
Well, we're supporting the FBI and the NTSB, and the primary role the military is playing is to provide naval support to the people who are trying to locate and retrieve parts of the plane. And as you know, we have a fairly long list of equipment that the Navy's provided to the National Transportation Safety Board, which we can give you. I can give it to you now, or we can give it to you later.
More specifically, have you been asked to simulate missile firings from the area or test where missiles might have been fired, or angles at which they might have been fired from the sea?
No, I'm not aware that we've been asked to do that. I think it's premature right now. There are still, as I understand it, three main theories of what caused this. And until we get more information to allow people to narrow down, focus on just one of those theories, I think it's premature to start doing the type of simulations you asked about.
Just one more, sorry. Have you been asked to take part in any chemical testing or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of, but remember, the FBI and other agencies have ample skill and experience in those areas.
I'm asking if you all,
I'm not aware that we've been asked. I would frankly be surprised if we've been asked to do that, but we stand ready to provide any assistance we can.
I'm going to do a follow-up on that particular question.
Sure.
One of the investigative reporters for ABC reported there were military exercises taking place in the area at the same time, and that the flare that people saw going upwards could have in fact been coming downwards from a C-130 or been something else coming up from the ground as part of that military exercise. Was there a military exercise in the area, and if so, were any kind of pyrotechnics or flares used?
I'm not aware that there were any military exercises in the area. I've been told by the Joint Staff that there were not. There was a P-3 flying down south to participate in an exercise considerably south of Long Island. It was flying over the location of TWA Flight 800. It was about 3,000 feet over it, and it was several miles south of TWA 800 when the disaster took place. It did not drop any flares.
Did it see anything?
No, nothing of note.
Did you give information on this National Guard exercise involving a helicopter and a C-130?
I know there was a C-130 in the area. I don't have information on a National Guard exercise, and as I say, I'll double check this, but my understanding from the Joint Staff was that there were not exercises taking place at the time, but I will double check.
I call an exercise probably a training session or something, just with two aircraft from the Air National Guard, and not a formal exercise.
I'll check on that. Yes.
To follow on Charlie's question about missiles, apart from simulating, what have you done to eliminate possibilities that any missiles might have been fired, any missiles might be missing from any military arsenals, any missiles might have been detected in flight?
Well, this is replowing old ground that people have been over for the last week or so, but we have made available all our radar tapes or sightings to the analysts who are looking into this crash. We have not seen any signs on those radar tapes from our own analysis or from their analysis of something that that looks like a missile. Now, this is a theory, and the idea that a missile may have been involved is one of 3 theories that the investigators have said they're holding open now. There are, as I understand it, and this is the Pentagon is not doing this investigation, so this comes from watching what you and others on CNN and ABC and all the news media have been reporting. There were some eyewitness accounts that make it sound as if a missile could have been involved. There is precious else to support that at this stage. But until the investigators have more information about what might have caused this disaster, I don't think they're willing to rule anything out, and I think that's reasonable on their part.
How does, if I can follow, how does the military interpret those eyewitness accounts? As erroneous, as inconclusive?
It's not our job to interpret them. We are clearly doing what we can to support the investigators. Until there's more information, it's very difficult to comment with any authority or knowledge about what happened. That's why there are still 3 theories, because the investigators have not been able to find enough information to allow them to focus on one of the 3 possible causes of this. There may be more possible causes when they get into it, but they've narrowed it down, as you know, to 3.
When you say your radar doesn't show any missile, are you discounting that one of the 3?
You're trying to force me to make a judgment. I'm not going to make a judgment. I'm not an investigator. The FBI is investigating this. We provide information to the FBI and the National Transportation Safety Board as requested. I think we have to wait until we get more evidence before anybody can talk with knowledge about what happened.
And some experts say that the radar would not have picked up a shoulder-fired missile as small as a Stinger type or something comparable. Do you have any word from the radar people at DoD or Air Traffic Control either affirming that or negating that statement?
It would have been difficult for these radars to have picked up a shoulder-fired missile.
Could you possibly elaborate just a little more on that as to what would differentiate the types of radar that would pick up that type of information, and whether civilian radars do or don't, and if you could give us a little bit more background on what determines the ability of a radar to provide reliable information of any type.
Without trying to take sides on whether or not a missile was involved, because I really don't know, and nobody knows right now, and I want to stress that for the 3rd or 4th time. The 2 arguments against a missile being involved are 1, range, and 2, lack of signals on a radar. Now, I'm not an expert on radars, so I can't give you a detailed explanation of what sort of radars might pick this up and what sort of radars might not pick it up. But nothing in the radar leads anybody to believe that there was a missile involved. The FAA radar probably could have picked this up. There were other radars involved that would have been extremely unlikely to have picked it up, in fact didn't. No radar has picked up anything that looks like a missile trail at this stage. So those are the 2 arguments against missiles being involved. Range, this plane was generally was outside the range of any shoulder-fired missile in the general inventory. Then you could ask other questions. Well, could it have been fired from the water? That is a question that they're looking into. I'm just not in a position to comment in any way as to what caused this crash, and you shouldn't be asking me. You should be asking the FBI. They're the people doing the investigation. Bill.
But some of the DoD people are finding the wreckage. I understand the main section of the fuselage has been found. Do you have any knowledge, Ken, as to the condition of that fuselage, what it might be, what the damage might indicate?
No.
Nothing
No.
from that? And
No,
sec-
but that's exactly the type of information that will come from the National Transportation Safety Board and the FBI. We're basically working for them to help them complete their investigation.
Any news on the black boxes?
No.
And then this report this morning, can you make any comment at all about a boat that was rented the afternoon
I'm
and then
afraid
returned and people left without getting their
No.
deposit?
I think you should ask the FBI or the Coast Guard about that.
You can help me with this, though. Is there a worldwide alert that there might already have been planned and in place other terrorist attacks against U.S. assets abroad and in this country? Is there any kind of alert?
Not that I'm aware of. We, as you know, after the OPM Sang bombing in Saudi Arabia last November, have had our troops in Saudi Arabia and some other areas on a high alert. They've been on a very high alert in Bosnia and some other parts of the country. Certainly, all our troops are aware of terrorist threats now, and that was true before the TWA-800, but I'm not aware of any specific alert. Whenever there's a disaster like this, reasonable people look at their security arrangements and take steps to improve them. And I assume that's going on in the commercial sector as well as the government sector, not just in this country, but all over the world.
No heightened alert attributable to the Khobar bombing and the possible sabotage?
We are at the highest possible level of alert in parts of Saudi Arabia and other parts of the world.
Senior defense official called that a critical state of alert. Is that correct?
Well, we can't be at a higher level of alert than we're at. Charlie?
There's speculation on possible shoulder-fired missiles. Done anything to intensify or re-intensify efforts on behalf of the State Department and this building to reacquire Stinger missiles which were passed out in Afghanistan or sent to Afghanistan and have not all been recovered?
Well, that's an interesting question. We made a very concerted effort after the Afghanistan war to reacquire or collect as many of these Stingers as possible. I'm not aware that there's been a new effort since this disaster took place. The question you ask, of course, presupposes that a missile was involved, and we don't know that. Stingers aren't the only shoulder-fired missiles available in the world today. They're fairly common weapons around the world.
Yeah. Can you give us a breakdown on numbers on missiles that might have been, that were sent to Afghanistan, and missiles, the number have been reacquired? Those are the numbers that might...
We'll check and see if we have that. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips. If we have them, well, if we can get them, we'll provide it.
Yes, yesterday the State Department said that it would pay for the trips of family members back to this country who are living in Saudi Arabia. Does that apply to DoD military family members, and what is this building's policy on whether or not they should return home or stay there?
Well, overall, we are still working out the final details of the return policy. But yes, we will pay. That's what the State Department announced, the policy they announced authorizing a return means that any government employee, any dependent of a government employee who comes back will come back at government expense. So that will be done. As I say, the details are still being worked out. I would expect that the final details will be resolved quickly, maybe even today, probably more likely tomorrow. And we would hope that the first people volunteering to come back will come back next week sometime, I would guess.
Are you encouraging people to come back, or not discouraging? Or?
I think we, before I can respond completely to that, we ought to have our policy in place. And when it's in place, it won't be a secret policy. But I would just like to wait until all the policymakers and lawyers and others, the CENTCOM people and others have gone through it and worked out the final details. Joe?
Ken, can you tell us how many dependents might be involved in this?
Yeah, there are about 1,000 DoD civilian and military dependents, and it's about 2-to-1 military to civilian ratio. I don't have the exact numbers, but that's basically. That's in Saudi Arabia.
While we're on the subject of Saudi, has anyone released what type of explosive was used in that bomb, truck
No.
bomb?
No, has not been released yet. Barbara?
Has Secretary Perry received any new security recommendations from General P or anyone else in the theater regarding force protection in Saudi, and did he discuss any of this morning on the Hill?
He received from General P today the recommendation for protecting the forces in Saudi Arabia, including possible relocation of forces. And that is now under review. The General P CENTCOM recommendations are under review. We've already started discussing this with people in Saudi Arabia, and we'll discuss it further with them as we reach our own conclusions on what to do.
Is the relocation Riyadh as well as Dhahran?
Well, that's exactly the type of question that we'll answer as we go through General P's recommendations and decide, make our own decisions about what to do.
Can you say whether there's anything besides force relocation being discussed at the moment?
Well, a variety of measures. Yes, in short, there are other things being discussed, but they're of the type we've already discussed here. They're passive defense measures and active defense measures. We've talked fairly extensively about some of the passive defense measures that took place before the Khobar Tower bombings and some that have taken place after the Khobar Tower bombings. We've also talked a lot about creating an intelligence fusion cell and doing some other things to improve intelligence collection and dissemination.
One last question. When would you expect that fusion cell to be up and running?
I think basically it's pretty much going. It's a question of improving what's already there and making it more helpful, more robust.
Two follow-ups on that. Is this plan from General P and the Saudi leadership, have they generally agreed on this plan? And would it entail the movement of, as you've said, 3,000 to 4,000 military personnel?
Well, I'd rather hold off until the plan is actually evaluated and complete. I know it's unsatisfactory to you. The Saudis have used the figure 3,000 or 4,000 troops. We've used the figure 3,000 or 4,000 troops. I don't think there's going to be a huge change in that. But that's what we're looking at in that area, and we'll work out the final details quickly.
Has this plan that's been proposed to the Secretary generally been approved by the Saudi leadership? This isn't.
I think
just
it's. We've been talking with the Saudis about this. The Saudis first proposed relocation in November, so this has been a continuing dialogue with the Saudis. General P did not submit a plan that had been chopped by the Saudis. The Saudis are very aware of what's in the plan. There's a dialogue going on. That dialogue will continue. We expect support from the Saudis for this plan.
Just to clarify something, you said the Saudis proposed relocation in November.
The Saudis first brought up the idea of relocation in November.
Was that proposal troops, forces in Riyadh or forces in Dhahran or both?
Riyadh.
With regard to this issue, on Friday or Thursday it was last week at a terrorism task force on the Hill at the House side, several expert witnesses testified, Ken, that the Saudi Arabian government was much weaker than was generally thought. Does the United States have full confidence in the royal family to protect American citizens in the kingdom? And the basic competence of their security apparatus there?
We have confidence in the Saudi government. We're working very closely with the Saudi government. Saudi Arabia has been and generally is a very secure place, but it's facing a threat. We're facing it together, and clearly in the last 9 months or so, there's been more terrorist activity there. The Saudis, as I said, are working very diligently to deal with this, as are we. we're partners in this.
TW 800 for a minute, we never really left it. Remember the last briefing, I asked you if DOD had any block seats filled with DOD personnel, and you were going to check. We were get an answer on that?
No, I believe there was only one DOD employee on the plane, a civilian employee. We did not have a block of seats on the plane.
And there was, all the previous questions about detection dealt with radar. What about satellite? Has anything turned up on military satellites?
Nothing significant.
Nothing significant? Meaning-
Nothing helpful.
And what was there that might even be?
Well, we have, as you know, ways of detecting all sorts of things, and we did detect an event that we believe was the explosion of the plane. But it doesn't add any new information. We already knew the plane exploded. We didn't need outside monitoring sources to tell us that, and it didn't provide any information that would help lead investigators to a conclusion as to why this happened.
Well, I
So
mean,
nothing that preceded the event?
No, nothing that preceded it.
well, I mean, the only strong indication you've had that we've heard about until now was that people saw what they believed was an explosion. Now you're telling us that the satellite saw something that appeared to be an explosion. aside
We
from
know the
people's
plane
visual-
blew up, right? And we know
Well,
it
we don't
fell
know.
into the water.
Well, people say they saw something that appeared to be an explosion. There's been no,
So the plane's in parts
Confirmation.
underwater. People saw it blow up. I don't want to get into semantics about what happened to the plane. The plane, something happened to the plane and it fell into the water. That's what we were able to confirm.
thank you.
Yeah, Mark, just, yeah.
Olympic security, is there any discussions going on for providing additional military or reserve personnel for all types or any types of securities down there? And also, is there any discussion about bolstering self-protection forces around areas where U.S. troops are residing around the Atlanta area?
We have taken prudent and thorough security measures, working with local and state and federal authorities. We aren't primarily a law enforcement or protection agency domestically. So what we've done is in support of other authorities, and we have done what they've asked us to do. We have also taken, we believe, prudent steps to protect our own soldiers down there, who are, some of whom are living in an area close to the Olympic operations.
I could follow up on that. Were any changes made in your thorough measures working with the local authorities? Any changes made since the Flight 800 disaster?
I'm not aware that they have been. They may have been, I'm just not aware of them. Yes?
Quick follow-up to the TWA issue again. The radars that you referred to, could you maybe comment a little bit more on those? Are they at military facilities in the area?
Some were
radars.
The main radar, of course, was the FAA radar. Then there was a fleet air support facility called the FASFAC, which is down in Norfolk, I believe, but it basically used the FAA radar. It just had a relay that brings FAA radars into its facility so it can monitor naval air traffic in the area. There was a NORAD radar that picked up something. There was a naval radar in the area. There were several military radars, but as I say, they have not produced anything that would help investigators determine what happened, nor would they produce anything that strengthens one of the various theories about what happened to the plane.
Is that naval radar in the area, the P3?
No, there was a ship in the area about 180 miles away.
They're automatically recorded on videotape, are they?
Well, the ship didn't record it because its radar was on low and it was out of the range of the radar.
But the others, the FAA and the others.
Yeah, they did record it. They have the tapes and they were able to analyze the tapes. I want to follow up on two things that came up earlier. There was a New York Air National Guard unit the 106th Air Rescue Recovery Wing in West Ham. The HC-130 went out again and worked until about 3 a.m. deploying flares to help ships. It was the 106th Air Rescue Recovery Wing from West Hampton, New York. And the flares that are used by this National Guard unit are gravity-type flares that are dropped from the plane and float on the water. That's what they were using to help illuminate the crash scene after.
Those flares that people saw, well, they dropped them after the,
Well, they dropped it afterwards. Yeah, they dropped it.
not many before during the exercise.
Not that I'm aware of, no. I mean, we've checked pretty closely what was going on in the area around the time. The second thing on the Stinger missiles, the DoD wasn't involved in the Stinger missile program in Afghanistan. It was other agencies that were involved, and they might be the people with whom you should check. Any more questions?
Okay.